Well, only if they support Iron Fest.
One more minute.
Only if they support Iron Fest.
And did they?
No, I
What?
don't think. I don't know what it's about. I don't know.
Don't get him worked up. He sits next to me.
No, that's
Why do we have for Bill Stewart if he resigned?
that's
We've got like 1 minute.
what they were going to present to him. The board contract. He looked at it and said,
No. Well, it was kind of weird, the email, because it's like, here's the, the contract, the draft contract. Oh, and we got a letter of resignation for Bill. And it's like, that doesn't make sense to me.
I think he was all ready for it. You know what I mean? I see it's clearing the place out to clean it.
Oh, really?
Stuff. Good job. Looks to me like it's good.
I didn't get one of those.
Get rid of himself and get his money. Which I guess it's his.
Yeah.
Nervous?
Oh.
No.
I'll call this regular council meeting in the Village of Grand Manan to order. It's 7:33 p.m. and we'll open with prayer this evening.
That your word says that your wisdom is first pure and peaceful. So God, we just ask tonight as we just talk over things that are probably well over my head, God, but are for the purpose of this community. God, we just ask that your wisdom lead, your wisdom guide, God, your peace be in all the conversation that will be here tonight. In Jesus' name we pray.
Thank you. Just a couple quick things for opening remarks. I think everybody has managed to survive the cold that we had this weekend, and I think most people have their water back from what I've seen and heard around. Some people maybe not so much. I think when you compare ourselves to other communities, we made out rather well, particularly as far as power outages went. I was in conversation with the CAO Friday night when the power was off just to see if we were going to have to open the community center as a warming station. And I think, if nothing else, it highlights the importance of making sure we have some backup generators here and we have that available if it's needed. Hopefully we won't have temperatures like that again for a while. I did want to highlight the fact that we are part of the Project Village Car Share with Eastern Charlotte Waterways, and we now have an electric vehicle up at the Coastal Transport Ticket Office. It's available to rent. There's a link on our Facebook page if anyone is interested. And I'd like to thank Coastal for helping us get that set up and providing a location for it to be. Finally, I wanted to recognize that we had 4 recipients on the island of the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal. The medal was created to honor the Queen and her lifelong service to Canada, as well as those residents of New Brunswick who, like Her Majesty, have been exemplary in their service to others. And so Tuesday night, the Lieutenant Governor was here along with our MLA, Andrea Anderson-Mason, and they recognized Ken Ingersoll, Mike Monroe, Susan Ballantyne, and Andrew Jones. And I'd like to congratulate them on behalf of Council and thank them for their contributions to the community. So with that, I would ask if there's any disclosure of conflict of interest. Hearing none, we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes from our regular council meeting of January 9th, 23. You heard the motion from Councillor Boyd. Do we have a seconder?
I will second that.
Seconded by Councillor Toll. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Number 6 is additions to the agenda. I have one addition. It's a bill to pay from the general operating fund. South Bay Construction, it's for the C&D site for $3,059.
I want to add the Silco Breakwater Lane corner.
Are you making that a motion
Yes,
to add both of those items?
I am.
Heard the motion by Councillor Turner. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. I'd suggest the Seal Cove Breakwater Corner be 14.4 under new business. And that brings us up to number 7, which is the RCMP report. The microphone's right over there if you want to go there. Thank you.
So files from January 2023, 78 files, in comparison to January 2022, which we had 55 files. 19 files were cleared with charges laid or recommended. 11 were traffic files, which is 24% high, quite higher. Without the traffic files, we'd have 10%. 3 assault files, 2 break and enters or unlawfully being in a dwelling. 2 failed to comply with conditions, 5 frauds, 2 mental health calls, 6 mischiefs, 6 thefts with 3 charges laid, 6 collisions, 19 other traffic reports or tickets. That is all.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Any questions or we? Thank you. We are off the hook. You get it off easy tonight. Remember that at the next traffic stop. All right, number 9, old business, Hospice of Charlotte, CAO Rayner to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. After the January meeting, we had the request from Hospice of Charlotte for some financial support. I did reach out to them to ask what their level of involvement is on Grand Manan, and I haven't heard anything back yet. So really nothing to update other than that, so.
Questions or comments? Just, yes.
Barring hearing back from them that they have involvement here, I would move that we set this issue aside.
Heard the motion from Councillor Green. Do we have a seconder? I will second that. Seconded by Councillor Toll. Question? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. 9.2 is Regional Service Commission update, and that is me. So with the new mandates for the Regional Service Commission, the board has been meeting a bit more frequently. In addition to our regular monthly board meeting, we've added a committee of the whole meeting to the 2 weeks prior. The focus has been on setting up committees for each of the pillars to come up with a strategic plan for each of them. And so after some discussion on committee composition, there was agreement that there would be a representative from each of the communities within the Service Commission. So I'm looking for some input for people to sit on the Regional Service Commission committees. There's economic development, community development, recreation, transportation, and public safety. And I missed tourism because it was on the other page when I printed it. Thank you. So basically the concept is each of those committees will come up with a strategic plan for the region. That plan will then go back to the board for approval, but it was felt by having someone from each community, it would give a broader based composition. And I know one of the concerns around this table has been how Grand Manan as a whole fits into the overall region. Simply because of our geography, it's a little bit more challenging for us. So I don't think it's going to be a huge time commitment. I expect some of it can be done through virtual meetings. That's how most of the RSC meetings is over Zoom, or you can attend in person. But I think it would be good to have people who are interested in each of those things from Grand Manan and willing to sort of take Grand Manan's voice and see how we can feed into the overall bigger picture. So, any questions, comments? Councillor Green?
Reading the announcement in the paper of the funding coming out, I think we're going to have people involved in those committees in order to put our cases forward for funding, I'm guessing. Is that the way it works?
Potentially funding, or potentially like just what the overall strategy is on the tourism side. If it's a tourism promotion, to make sure that there is some inclusion of Grand Manan and whatever that promotion would be. Really, we're working with a blank slate on all of these things, so it's up to the committees to sort of develop some sort of plan going forward. It will ultimately be approved by the board. And I think the other piece of this is whatever the strategy is, the RSC is responsible for paying for it, which ultimately means it's divided out between the 8 communities that are sitting around the table, and ultimately we will have a percentage of that. So it's having the ability to it's a lot like sitting here, having the ability to have a great plan, knowing what you want, but also being realistic about what the dollars you may have to work with are. So the thought was this takes some of the pressure off the 8 of us who are sitting around at the board level, because there's obviously a lot of work going into all of these things, and it's a way to spread some of that responsibility around. In my mind, it makes sense to have someone from the committees that we do have that would jump into some of those, and then that leaves us with a couple that we don't necessarily have those committees here, but that would be my suggestion off the bat. So I don't know if anybody else has comments or thoughts, or have I explained this as clear as mud, because that's how I feel about this some days. Councillor Boyd?
Are they looking for members from every council in the region to be present on each of those committees?
Yes, so each committee will have 8 people. I was gonna say, I would like input. If you are comfortable with me choosing people, I can do that too. If you want to leave it with me, if you want to volunteer or whatever while we're sitting here, I'm okay either way, but I didn't want to just start handpicking people without at least bringing it here and seeing if there is interest and what people are thinking.
Well, I'd be interested in the transportation part of it, very interested.
I have a winner. Very good.
But that's probably it.
And I would be interested in economic development.
Thank you.
And I think maybe we should reach out to tourism for that position, maybe. I don't know how everyone feels about that, but they've been very active, so.
And
I would take, doesn't matter. I don't think they have a solid waste on that one.
It was community development.
I say, how do you feel about community development? Okay. Perfect. And that leaves us recreation and public safety.
You could put me on. Public safety, I guess. It seems to be where I get set on every organization I get involved with, so, yeah.
So I guess that leaves me with rec.
Thank you all for volunteering so cheerfully. This was great. And if it's okay with the group, I do like the idea of reaching out to the Tourism Association and seeing if they have someone, if that's okay. Thank you all, and I'll try to keep the updates coming. I think it's going to be a really busy time at the RSC and a lot of stuff happening, so whether it's by email or here formally, I'll try to keep the updates coming. It's sometimes like watching paint dry, and then all of a sudden a lot of things happen, so. All right, so that was 9-2. Number 10 is the 10-minute open session. Okay. And that would take us down to new business. 14-1 is the Charlotte County Fair sponsorship request. I believe that letter's in your meeting package. We received a letter looking for sponsorship of the Charlotte County Fair and just looking for input, which I don't have. Perfect, thanks. The fair this will be the 12th annual one. It's held the fall of 23, September 16 to 17.
Was
Councilor
there a
Boyd?
dollar amount with that?
Nope.
No, I didn't see one, so.
Councilor Boyd?
Did we get asked last year? I can't remember. I feel like this is a first, at least in our mandate.
It
And
is the
if-
first I've seen this.
Ever? Like, have you?
Ever.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe let me word it this way. Is there any interest in sponsoring the Charlotte County Fair? I have to say, I'm a little hesitant, given our sponsorship of Island Fest here and some of the other activities that we do sponsor locally. I think it might be a bit more appropriate for us to direct our funds that way. And I'm seeing some nodding, so Councillor Turner?
I'm just wondering if maybe we should, at some point, just let, like, put it out that it's happening, so that if people wanted to have like a booth or something, you know, that there could be community participation if they wanted to, even if we weren't sponsoring.
Maybe we could write back and ask if there is an opportunity for that and share it on our Facebook page. Is that fair? Okay. Very good. 14-2, Irving Oil vacant properties, Councillor Layton.
It's been brought to my attention, I guess, Urban Oil owns 3 properties on the island. All are abandoned. Specifically, the one in Castalia adjacent to the mailboxes. There's approximately 100 people use that mailbox, and the property is completely full of potholes, frozen over, and it's a safety hazard for a lot of our elderly community members that pick up their mail there. my thoughts, I know how long things take to pull off, but my thing is, let's take a couple of loads of gravel up there and level it off, fix it up, maybe get permission from Urban Oil. I realize that it's not our property, and it's not normally, we don't normally fix other people's property up, but that's a community hub, and I think it's important that it's safe. Urban Oil has a beautification program that they use throughout New Brunswick, and it would be great if they would focus some of their interests on those abandoned properties here, maybe plant some trees, maybe we could help maintain it, maybe a partnership in some way, but I'm just looking for maybe staff to reach out to Urban Oil and possibly get permission to at least, if they won't spend the money, get permission for us to spend the money in a timely manner to get that situation fixed for our elderly people that pick up their mail. But in the long term, I'd like to see them fix up the 3 properties that are abandoned, and there are holes in our community. They used to be a hub, and now they're just a paved parking lot kind of, or it isn't even paved, but so maybe I can make a motion directing staff to reach out to Urban Oil and include us, if possible, in any of their beautification projects. Is that enough to, I'd like to go further with, I'd like to get those potholes fixed, if possible. And I know we do maintain other properties owned by other people that we maintain, so I don't understand. Just hopefully we can find a resolution and get some gravel there in a timely manner, I guess.
So your motion is to reach out to Irving about their beautification program over the long term,
Yes.
and in the short term,
Get permission to either they fix up their property or a partnership with them and put a couple loads of gravel. And it's not a big ticket item, but it's an important one.
heard the motion by Councillor Layton. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Turner. Question?
Is Canada
Could we-
Post, you say by the mailboxes there?
Yes,
Is
yes.
Canada Post involved there? in
Canada
that?
Post's involved, and they have a, from what I understand, a 10-foot right-of-way or permission in front of the mailboxes. It's one swipe with the plow, and that's what they maintain, and that's all they have to maintain. So the rest is, it's a mess. It's a mess.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could fix it and Irving could pay for it. Might be something we could look into.
I agree. I think it's just important that it gets done sooner than later, I think.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Toll and then Councillor Green.
I just wonder if, I know Canada Post only fixes part of it because we have the same problem too at our mailbox, but if we're gonna fix one of them, I'm sure all of them could stand to have, all the mailboxes and all the Irving Ritters could stand to have some fixing. I know where our mailbox is, it's a mess too, so,
Well, I was approached by 3 people that get their mail in Castelia, and
yeah.
I don't know about the rest of them, but
Yeah.
probably I should have looked. But if there's an issue with any of them, we should, I mean, it's a hub, it's a part of our community, and it's.
Maybe if we
it's-
went to Canada Post and just asked if they could fix them all, at least the part that, because I'm sure they're all in the same state, you get the cars turning the same way, and you always end up with that same little pothole right there in front of the mailbox.
I agree it's an issue that needs to be addressed. I'm not sure if I quite agree with us spending money on other people's property without, we had the same type of an issue at Southwest Head Lighthouse last year about this time. And once the property owner was made aware of the situation, they stepped up in a timely manner and made it happen. I would be a lot more comfortable with our taking action would have to be with their permission or after their permission, in my opinion.
Any other question? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. (14.3) Village office door locks. Councillor Boyd to address.
Okay,
Now it's on. Maybe it was on the whole time. I don't know. All right. So, as we know, it was recently brought to the attention of Mayor Morris and staff that both doors to the village office had shared keys with the rest of the building, and that anyone that's ever held a key for the community center had access to the office and all its contents. The decision was made by staff to change the locks immediately. After speaking with the CAO, the new locks aren't the best, as every time you go in and out, you have to press the button on the back again, and so if you forget, then they're still kind of open to anybody. I'd like to see both access points of the village office accessible by key fob systems similar to that of the fitness center. That way it's tracked by who comes in and out. You can see who used the fob at what time. I also believe that this door in the back of the hallway should just be locked other than staff. I don't think that needs to be a public access point. I think this is our front door to the village office, and then that should just be for staff only, whether it be the CAO or rec staff going in and out to the arena. I know several of our staff members use the fitness center at their lunch hour, so in and out through that way. So I would like to see that one just staff only access there, and a fob system at both ends. And I think that the front door should also remain locked with an entry buzzer at the front desk. There has been some incidents in the past where staff have been rushed by upset residents. And while I think that our residents should be able to have access, I don't think the staff safety should be put at risk. I know this is not all the time, but it has happened in the past. Perhaps having to knock on the door and be allowed in may help cooler heads prevail. And I do think that our staff do a bang-up job, but they do have only so many hours in the day. And when there's people constantly cycling through, I feel like they're burdened with having to make time for everybody that comes in because that's what they want to do. And I think we need to move more towards making appointments to meet with the CAO, to meet with the treasurer, to meet with the mayor, whomever. And I'm sure, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, if Trish showed up, resident Trish showed up and wanted to speak with CAO Rayner over something, I expect that Esme could probably look and say, well, he's busy right now, but he can come back in half an hour. Like, it's probably not much of a chance for them ever to say, well, no, it's going to be 3 weeks before you can see Chris. So that's my thoughts on it. And so in saying that, I would move that the two entrances of the village office be set up with a fob system to better aid in the staff's ability to safely and efficiently do their jobs and to protect the sensitive materials that are housed in the village office.
You heard the motion from Councillor Boyd. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Brown. Question?
Question.
Councillor Layton, and I see Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons has leaned forward, so start.
All the important information is locked up under lock and key or behind a locked door, regardless of if that's open or not? No?
All our files are accessible. If you can get in here, you can get to our files.
Okay.
There's a lot of keys floating around.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons.
So it is, you said something about the outside door too? No, just this one here. That's what, okay.
Councillor Turner?
So are we saying we'd have this door locked during office hours?
That's what I propose, but I mean, it's open for discussion, but just to be a matter of somebody coming and knocking on the door and whoever's sitting at the front desk can buzz them in or not.
Councillor Layton?
I don't really agree with that. I think this is a community. I think people should be able to make themselves available to the village office at any time instead of knocking and just, I don't know. I just think it's not very welcoming if you got to knock on the door and the door's locked. People aren't going to feel very welcome to coming in. But I totally agree with the key fob 100%, but that's after hours, I think, not when staff is present.
You can set that fob to lock at 4, if you can set those. Because I don't think they should be locked even all day.
I can't knock every time I come through that door.
What we've always said about municipal government, we're closest to our people and most accessible. And the thought of having the door lock seems to fly in the face of that. At the fob issue, yeah, it's a little technology. And for people making appointments, that is probably where we should be, but there's always going to be that person that finally catches someone here when, or thinks about it at the right time and they're here, and if it's convenient for staff to deal with them, that is, or to tell them to come back in half an hour or tomorrow morning or whatever. I think we have to be accessible, and locking the door would be an affront to that, in my opinion. So if this is a two-forked motion, I can support the fob issue, but I really don't want to see the doors locked. All right.
Counselor Boyd?
Well, can I make an amendment to that motion then, to say that we go to the fob system, keep this door locked at all times, and this one to be locked at the end of office hours?
Or
Is
if
that-
no one's in the office.
If no one's in the office, like if it's lunch break and everybody happens to be gone, then it's just I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I know Chris and staff are quite familiar with this fob system at the fitness center, so.
And they put in a stop only sign on the outside of that, yeah. For people that are used to this walking in, and it'll say, this is how it is.
Okay, so I have a motion from Counselor Boyd to his motion, and I believe Counselor Brown seconded. Are you okay with that amendment? Any more questions on the motion? All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. 14.4 is the Seal Cove Breakwater Corner. Counselor Turner.
Past that house, you them until. And I've had several close encounters, and if I've had that many, I can only imagine how many are actually taking place. And with the feed storage there and the shoreland trucks coming and going all the time, I'm just afraid that one of these days, one of those trucks is going to be coming and somebody flies down through there, and I mean, those guys can't stop on a dime, but it's pretty hairy. Coming up off the wharf, they do the same, but at least you can see them. I mean, it's a big, wide, entrance to the wharf there. You're gonna, I mean, you still may say, well, I've got the right of way, I'm going, but at least you can see them. But when they're coming down past the house, they can catch you off guard, and because they think they're just going straight, they're not touching their brakes, nothing, they're just heading down. So my suggestion, I don't know what's proper, but I think we should reach out to DTI, ask them if there's anything that could be done, like maybe a yield sign with a straight arrow, so they know they don't have to yield if they're going around the corner, or even, if there was a white line around, I'm using all the hand motions here, but around that corner so that you can see this is where the road goes, and probably just some public information, like maybe on Facebook or something, but it's tricky.
So are you making a motion to reach out to DTI?
I am making a motion that we reach out to DTI.
You heard the motion from Counselor Turner. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Counselor Boyd. Question?
So this is what we do. Our CAO will get a hold of DTI and figure this out.
My recollection from when we talked about speed zones is that they have certain standards for signage and other things, so I think get them to have a look at it and provide their recommendations. Because we can't change signage on that road without their permission, so that's the next logical step. Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary-minded? Motion carried. 15-1 is the Transportation Committee report. Councillor Layton.
Thank you, fellow councillors, Madam Mayor. I haven't had a report for the last couple of meetings, but definitely a lot's been going on behind the scenes. Our road maintenance tender, Coastal Enterprises, will complete their contract of providing bush cutting and ditching this week. There's been a few deficiencies identified by our engineer Dave Steves, but generally the work has been top quality. The operators and staff have represented their company well and respectful to people's property. I've gained a lot of insight about our roads, every culvert, ditch, waterway, whatever's going on. I know what the problem is, and there's a lot more problems identified than I ever thought there was. The work completed, some places you can notice the ditches we've done ditching, other places we skipped ditching. We never had a lot of money. We had so much money to do ditching, and we identified all the critical drainage areas, and all of those have been fixed as of in the next couple of days. So I'm glad it's over with. Coastal will be leaving in the next couple of days, and our island will be much safer. Our island will be much safer and a safer infrastructure, and we thank them for that. DTI. Our committee has spent a lot of time on this file. Our progress is in putting together a potential contract between the Village of Grand Manan and the province of New Brunswick is close to being complete. At least we're up to almost a draft, I think. I know I could sit here and talk about this all day long, but basically I'm hoping this can be presented to council for discussion in the very near future, maybe before our next meeting, because it's kind of time sensitive, but hopefully for the next meeting we can have a presentation to put forward to council, and with your guys' approval, hopefully we can move ahead with this. I'm confident it's the best solution. I don't want to ever see a third party come in here and take over our highway system for a $2 million price tag, and our portion is half, which would be $1 million. So I think we can do this in a very cost-effective manner, which is going to benefit the province and the Village of Grand Manan. So without getting any further, that's where we are with that. It's been a busy file, a lot going on. Chris is a guy, he sits in that office and it just blows my mind, but he gets paid the big bucks and he's doing a good job, and I appreciate it. And I'm just going to speak lightly on our Ferry Partnership Committee. We've been very active on that file. We've made a good case to the province, I think. We're very involved with Andrea, with the minister, with Paul, the Department of, he's the Director of Marine Operations, but we've put together something on paper. It's sitting on a desk in Fredericton somewhere. You know, I don't make decisions, none of us do here at that level, but hopefully the province can entertain our idea of giving us a couple more months of our Grand Manan 5 service, but we'll see where that goes. But for now, it's in their hands, not ours, so that's a good thing. And thank you all. That's about it. So that's all I have for tonight. Anything else to add? Questions? Whatever. Bonnie?
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Any questions on the transportation report? Very good. We got off easy tonight, too.
Excellent.
16.1 is the procedure bylaw. Councillor Boyd.
Okay. So, procedural bylaw changes, potential procedural bylaw changes. Since the resignation of Councillor Russell, we have been rolling along here with 8 councillors. I feel that this group has meshed well together, and we have many irons, just as Councillor Layton said, in the fire that we are currently working on pushing forward. When looking at the rest of the communities within our zone, and the province really as a whole, we are certainly in the minority for council size versus community size. For example, just in our own Zone 4, St. Stephen has a council of 8. St. Andrews just went to 9 with taking in Shamcook and Bayside. Campobello has 4, Macadam has 4, Fundy Shores is 5, and Eastern Charlotte, I believe, is 8. 8 is Eastern Charlotte? Yeah. I had 5, but that must be a typo. we don't have a ward system here as some other communities do, but I feel that around this table, we represent the island fairly well. That being said, there will be a call within the next few months for a provincial by-election to fill vacant seats on councils around the province. It is in my opinion that we should remain a council of 8. To do this, if it's all are in agreement, we must amend our procedural bylaw to define the council as a mayor and 8 councillors. It currently reads mayor and 9 councillors. To make the timeline before the by-election, we would have to do the first 2 readings, which would be by title only, as the bylaw is quite lengthy. I believe that's correct, CEO Rayner?
It is quite lengthy, yes.
And as well as staff would have to post the appropriate advertisements before the next meeting. I know that we don't all do it for the money, but the budget council salaries for 9, so if we were to go with 8, the additional salary could be split between the 8, or we could put it in reserves or donate that other salary, whatever would be the group's decision. So that being said, I would move that the bylaw committee amend the current procedural bylaw to read that a council is defined as a mayor and 8 councillors, and have the title only reading ready for our next monthly meeting.
You heard the motion from Councillor Boyd. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Question. Councillor Green?
Having been involved in council for a number of years prior, and again, having an even number of councillors does not bode well, or didn't. It might not. It can lead to a lot of party system or whatever. So I think an odd number works better, personally. And if we were going to reduce the number, I'd be more in favor of going to 7. That means the 8 that were here elected under the old bylaw would stay until their term was expired, and the next time there's an election, there would only be 7 vacancies. That would be my thought on that.
Councillor Brown?
I noticed that when you were saying how many councillors they had in different areas, that they were 8s and 4s, and they were quite evenly balanced as well. And I just wonder if that makes a difference, having 9 or 8.
Well, it certainly puts potentially more onus on Madam Mayor. Certainly, if anybody watched the first Eastern Charlotte council meeting a couple weeks ago, Mayor Craig had to vote on at least, two of their decisions. So currently the mayor refrains from voting unless there's a tie. So an odd number certainly reduces the chances of a tie. So as Councillor Green said, Councillor Brown said, a lot of them are even numbers. If you watch any of them or spend any time, there's not a lot of ties all the time. So I guess it's really whatever the group feels. I feel 8 is fine, but if the group would rather see an odd number, then it's majority rules, I guess.
Councillor Layton?
I just think we've got a lot going on, and I can't see it ever going down to 7 people because the workload distributed around everybody was going to be significantly more. I think there's a hole in council without Greg here. He was very big in this council, and he played a big role. And his responsibilities has shifted on to somebody else. And if another person leaves council, then everybody's stressed out, and you're not as productive. So I'd like to see it, keep it exactly what we have. We have a great dynamic. I don't think we can argue a lot about anything, really. We're all on the same page, basically, for most votes. I mean, so I agree with Dan that we keep it the same with 8 councillors.
So there's a motion on the floor. Are there any more questions or comments before we vote?
I just wanted, we have to look at it as not just this council. I mean, because yes, I think we're effective, and I think we do have a good just a good vibe going here, but, you know, this is in the future too. I don't have a problem with the 8, but I do think in making our decision, we have to be aware that it's not always going to be like this.
Anyone else? Counselor Green?
And I believe whatever decision we make has to apply for the next 2 elections. We can, once we make it, we can't change it in 6 months or 2 years. We have to go through 2 election cycles, I believe, before we can change it again.
Okay, are we ready for the vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. All right, 16.2 is the CAO bylaw, which is also Counselor Boyd.
Was that you were saying about taking up Councillor Russell's responsibilities? I am in the chair, yeah. Okay, 16.2, potential CAO bylaw change. The way our current procedural bylaw reads, and correct me if I'm wrong, we cannot have a council meeting without the presence of a clerk. Currently, we have a clerk and a deputy clerk on staff, but in the event that they are both unavailable, we have no way to actually meet procedurally. I met with the CAO on this, and we looked at the Municipalities Act, and we also spoke with the executive director at UMMB, and I think we need to make an addition to the CAO bylaw stating that if both the clerks are unavailable, the CAO becomes the standby clerk. This isn't a situation that I foresee happening often, but it will cover us in the event if it does happen. If it's not written in our bylaws, we can't do it. So, saying that, I would move, more work for the bylaw committee, that the bylaw committee add that if neither clerks are available, the CAO can be acting clerk to the CAO bylaw.
You heard the motion from Counselor Boyd. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Counselor Layton. Question? Counselor Green?
I believe if neither clerk's available, can't the group appoint a temporary clerk for that meeting? Isn't that in the Municipalities Act? Or
I believe, if we read it correctly, and speaking with Dan Murphy, it just says clerk in the Municipalities Act. There's no, any that I've read, there's no kind of on-the-fly thing. And so this would kind of take that on-the-fly thing out, because chances are we're never not going to have 1, 2, and 3 here. Not here. Here. Not here. But I could be wrong on that.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Anybody else feel like we should appoint Counselor Boyd to the bylaw committee? 17.1 is approval to pay invoices from the general operating fund. Beers Neal for the 2022 surplus, $3,162.50. Dutchman Contracting, Tank House Building, $1,667.50. Atlantic Charters for the flight to Fredericton, $3,281.81. Silk Stevens, C&D Site Monitoring, $5,227.22. Silk Stevens on the North Head Dredge Material, $8,690.93. Silk Stevens for the C&D Site Delineation, $10,567.17. Dillon Consulting, the Rural Plan Final Bill, $6,381.35. And South Bay Construction for the C&D Site, $3,059.
I'd make a motion to pay these invoices of the general operating fund.
You heard the motion from Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Do we have a seconder?
I will second that.
Seconded by Councillor Toll. Question? Okay, I've got all kinds of questions. Councillor Brown, Councillor Green, Councillor Boyd.
We have a tank house?
It's a watershed for the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
No lobsters.
explains our lunch meeting budget. Okay, anybody else? It's a joke. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. 17.2, to pay from the General Capital Fund, Coastal Enterprises for the ditching project, $151,427.18. Coastal Enterprises for the ditching project, $142,642.77. Silk Stevens for the ditching project, $23,752.07. Silk Stevens for the ditching project, $17,415.18. Brunswick Engineering Airport Project, $10,671.01. Aero Equipment Sales Limited for the 2007 International Fire Truck, $47,034.17.
I'd make a motion to pay these invoices out of the general capital fund.
You heard the motion by Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. I just want to correct, the 2007 International is actually the garbage truck, not a fire truck, just so we're clear. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. 18 is transfers to cover these bills. 18.1 is to transfer funds from our line of credit to the general capital fund to cover the airport project. I'd love to have an amount. You could actually say it if you wanted.
Want me to?
Yes.
$9,682.86.
You heard a motion from Councillor Boyd. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Turner. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. 18.2 is transfer $5,786.80 from the General Operating Reserve Fund to the General Operating Fund.
I will make that motion.
You heard the motion from Councillor Toll.
I'll second it.
Councillor Greenlaw seconded. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Transfer $220,000. Did I just say that right? From the gas tax fund to the general capital fund. I did say that right, didn't I?
Gotta
Okay.
get some action on this side of the table. I'll move.
Heard the motion from Councillor Green. Seconded by Councillor Turner. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. And transfer $42,652.02 from the capital reserve fund to the general capital fund.
I'll make that motion.
Heard the motion from Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Seconded by Councillor Layton. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. So the next item is closed session. We have 7 items. Financial, building inspection services, personnel for the building inspector, personnel for the planning advisory committee, property for the C&D site, a property acquisition potentially, financial for the credit union health center, and financial for the transfer station.
I'd move that we move into closed session.
You heard the motion for Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Seconded by Councillor Toll. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thanks, everybody.
Authorize the village to enter into and sign an agreement with the RSC to provide building inspection services, as well as the MOU related to this event.
You heard the motion from Councillor Green. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. 19.2 is personnel for the building inspector.
Okay. Whereas the Village of Grand Manan has contracted with the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission to obtain professional building inspection services, be it resolved that Keith Vernon Faulkner, Michael Joseph Kyle Hall, John Raymond Cliff, and Sherman Ralph Ross are building inspectors for the Village of Grand Manan. Be it further resolved that Keith Vernon Faulkner, Michael Joseph Kyle Hall, John Raymond Cliff, and Sherman Ralph Ross shall remain building inspectors for the Village of Grand Manan so long as they continue in the employ of the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission. And be it further resolved that Keith Vernon Faulkner, Michael Joseph Kyle Hall, John Raymond Cliff, and Sherman Ralph Ross shall remain building inspectors for the Village of Grand Manan so long as the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission remains contracted to provide building inspection services to the Village of Grand Manan.
You heard the motion from Councillor Green. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. 19.3 was personnel for the Planning Advisory Committee.
Oh, is that me again?
I think so.
It is, okay. I move that we appoint Dwayne Griffin to the PAC starting now, and his term will end on January 1st of 2026.
You heard the motion by Councillor Green. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Boyd. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. 19.4 was property at the C&D site, and we have no motion coming out of that, but we are continuing direction to staff to continue the negotiations with Greenfield and the Department of Environment. 19.5 was a property acquisition.
I would move that council directs staff to begin negotiations with property owners regarding a potential land acquisition at the price agreed upon in closed session.
You heard the motion by Councillor Boyd. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Brown. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. 19.6 was financial, credit union, and health center.
I would make a motion that, with regard to the former Scotiabank building, we defer rent for 1 year from the opening of the credit union, and we contribute $10,000 towards the setup of the credit union, and 50% of legal fees up to a maximum of $10,000.
You heard the motion from Councillor Turner. Do we have a seconder?
I will second that.
Seconded by Councillor Toll. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. And 19.7 was financial for the transfer station.
I would like to make a motion to accept the letter of resignation received from Island Waste and Recycling.
You heard the motion from Councillor Toll. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. That wraps up this meeting. Our next regular council meeting we scheduled for February 27th. We moved it up a week just so everybody remembers, 7:30 here at the Community Center. Before we adjourn, I just would like to say we have 2 new young volunteers that are helping us tonight, and we'd like to thank them for all their efforts. It's great to see new people here.
I would move to adjourn.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Isn't that supposed to be, that's all, folks?